One, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you. My name is Nina Lee. I work at Bridgeport Elementary as a third grade teacher, and I am very excited to be here. Thank you.
We're very glad to have you, Nina. Thank you. And thank you to all of the other committee members. I'd like to run through a quick introduction of our committee members, starting with Giselle on Zoom. Gigi.
Hey, hello everyone. I'm sorry I'm not able to be there tonight. I had to take my car to the dealership and it was closer to come home than to go to school. So enjoy my dinner too. Giselle Escobar, Associate Principal at Tiger High.
Thank you, Gigi. And starting on my left, Celeste, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi there, Celeste Brandon. I have kids at Byram in first grade and fourth.
Thank you. And we have Patty Roberts. Hi, Patty. And once again, my name is Brad Dorsey. I am the chairman of this committee. And to my right,
I'm Jacob DeGraw, vice chair of the committee. I have a son who is an 8th grader at Hazelbrook Middle School.
My name is Nasir Lynn. I'm the secretary of this committee, and I go to Claude High School.
Good evening. I am Dr. Lisa McCall, and I am the assistant superintendent.
Good evening. I'm Zinnia An. I'm the director of equity and inclusion.
Hello, my name is Henry Castillo, and I am a senior at Tigard High.
And my name is Owen, and I'm also a junior at Tigard High.
thank you, everyone. Like Owen, I like to make the mistake of saying I'm a junior in high school still. That's just wishful thinking. And Jacob, would you like to read our meeting objectives for this evening?
Sure. So we'll just do a quick check on the minutes from last meeting. They were sent out. So we'll ask if anybody has any corrections to them and if everything looks good. We already essentially did number 2, but we will have a discussion on trying to recruit other new members as well and what we want to do with that. We have some unfinished business from the last meeting where we didn't decide on public comment structure. So we're going to have that discussion and agree on how we're going to do public comment for this committee. And then we're going to get into like the last 3 topics. We'll maybe just blend into each other as far as like what we want this committee to achieve. So one of the things that we want to talk about is the intersection between this committee and the one that it is essentially replacing, the EASH committee. So we want to talk about how we want to merge those two and what it's going to look like going forward. And then we also want to talk about the annual equity audit, which was released a little bit ago, as a starting point for us to look at in regards to, you know, what are we going to hold the school district accountable for? And that might be one of the first documents that we want to look at. And then lastly, you know, what do we want to achieve for this next school year with the understanding that there is a report that's due around the June timeframe.
Thank you, Jacob. And we will adjourn at 8 p.m. sharp. So I'm going to do the best that I can to wrap things up right around 7:57. Okay. As Jacob mentioned, are there any modifications or errors identified in the last meeting minutes? And we'll just give 3 minutes for everyone to review.
If there's no comments, I would motion to approve the meeting minutes from last meeting. Yeah, microphone.
Sorry, thank you. I didn't have any corrections, but I had some clarifying questions
Mhm.
on the right above 729. There were some questions around frequency of meetings. I know that it got
Mhm.
answered later on around 7:33, but there were still some parts of the conversation that was not finished. Is that going to be part of unfinished business today or?
Yes, that will be a part of our unfinished business.
Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Okay, I believe everyone has had a chance to review the last meeting minutes. Just a reminder, the minutes are going to be posted at www.ttsdschools.org after the meeting and after they've been approved and are made official. Any additional corrections, points of clarification? Okay, we'll move on to new committee members. One moment. We'll backtrack a little bit. Jacob made a motion. Does anyone second his motion?
I second the motion.
The motion has been placed and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. Okay, the motion passes. And as I mentioned, we were talking about new committee members. We currently have one new committee member with us today. I open the floor to discussion about any additional committee members that we may want to bring on board, and any additional topics associated with new committee members that are brought to the table.
So, Zinnia, I think you mentioned another potential student that might want to become a committee member.
Yes, we had extended the invitation out when we were recruiting for the integrated planning committee. And there was a student that expressed interest from Tualatin that wanted to be a part of this advisory committee.
Okay, so that would put the total at where are we at? We're at 8 right now. I can do my count. I can do, math. 7, 8. Yeah, 8.
I think originally we had 9.
Oh, that's right. Jonathan's not here. Yes.
And also Michael Braxton, who's a parent and grandparent.
That's right. Okay, so that's 10. Okay.
And so I think, so we have 4 students without Jonathan here.
Mhm.
And then that would be another student, and that would be 5 students,
Mhm.
which would be, is it half? We'd have 10 altogether. So it would be half, because we don't.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that would be, you'd have half of the committee being students, which is great.
Yeah.
We also wanted to, I had a question about community partners
Mhm.
as a potential spot for another member.
Okay. There was one other individual interested in membership. It was a parent of a student with disabilities, and so I wanted to open that up for a conversation, for a spot for them. They're part of the integrated group. Her name was Raya. Yeah,
I think that's a great idea.
yeah. Okay.
So that brings us to 12 members.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so how would those invites go out? Like would Brad or I be responsible for sending those out, or Like what would be the steps to get those new committee members?
Do you want to go back and call? Yeah, so for the students, if we are all on board with having the student that I shared, I can extend that to them for them to participate next time, and then they'll introduce themselves. And then for the other members, yeah, I think Chair had already highlighted that conversation, so I think that extension from him would make sense. And then I think we had, was that it? Oh, and the community partner potential, and I can reach out to our ERCO partners, which supports our Pacific Islander Engagement Program, as well as our Latino Network partner, who serves our high school programs as well. So I can reach out to those two community partners and see who would be willing to join us.
And there was further discussion about capping membership in the committee at a certain number. I believe that number was 16 when we last spoke.
Yeah, and if, yeah, as chair, if you want to make a motion that you can do that as chair and then take a vote.
Before I make that motion, was there any other questions or clarification or anything, any other numbers people wanted to think about capping the committee at and why?
Well, I was just thinking, we have Gigi, who's a secondary administrator. I'm wondering if we want to have another administrator, maybe from an elementary. And if that is the case, I can reach out to the elementary admin to see if there's interest there.
Okay, so I make a motion to cap membership on this committee at 16. Is that seconded?
I second that motion.
Okay, the motion to cap the membership at 16 has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Nay. Okay, the motion to cap membership of this committee at 16 members has been moved, seconded, and approved.
Chair, there was in the notes, there was a question around what's considered an appropriate quorum. Do we know that answer now that we have our cap?
We can place that in the table for discussion as to a quorum, an appropriate number for quorum for this committee. It's open to discussion.
I was thinking if we capped at 16 for this size, it would be a quorum that would be, yeah.
8 or 9, or
Can we check that answer with
Sure.
Patty?
it has to be a majority, or it does have to be at least half.
At least
Okay.
half, okay. So then we're saying the quorum is 8 or 9?
I think 8 would be the safest.
Okay.
Anyone want to make that motion?
So tonight we would be at quorum because there's 8 members. Okay, got it.
I move to set the quorum number at 8.
I'll second that.
All those in favor of setting the quorum at the numerical number 8, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. Our quorum going forward will be 8. Thank you, Director On. Any other topics regarding membership? Okay, we're going to move forward to the discussion of unfinished business. And I'm going to turn the conversation over to Vice Chair Jacob.
Yeah, so on the agenda, the unfinished business is, again, like I said, deciding on public comment structure. I believe in our packet was an example of description of public comment. And I guess the short of it is we can ask for in-person, we can say allow for in-person public comment, virtual, or have it be written. And I just want to put it out there for the committee. What are we most comfortable with? What would what form of public comment would we prefer to have?
For those on the committee who haven't looked at the public comment structure as described in tonight's packet, can we have about 3 minutes? Sure.
Yeah, so the public comment that was included with the packet, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Patty, but it appears to be specific for in person. And just that's kind of the way that it reads to me. Are there? Mhm.
These are the public comment structures
Mhm.
for school board meetings.
Right.
And we plan for in person. But if someone requests, they want to write something or they would want to be online, we allow that. We can change this so that it says you have options.
Right. Would we be able to limit it to in writing and not allow in person, or do we have to allow in person?
No, you can limit it.
Okay. Okay.
I have a question, and I wonder, I would like to just hear from committee's insights. I wonder about in-person public comment when we don't have the infrastructure like we do at the board meetings, where we have somebody that helps with like outside like security and support as needed for safety reasons. And so I just wonder about that. But I'd like to hear if anyone else has any insights related to that concern.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of my concern as well. Security, as well as, wanting to create as welcoming and comfortable of an environment as possible for committee members and if we ever had any other guests come in. So, but of course, want to put it out to the committee whether or not we would prefer to limit to written only rather than having in-person public comment.
Or even
Or virtual.
considering it virtual.
Yeah.
Or virtual.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we could say in writing, or we could say writing or virtual.
Yeah.
Gigi.
Yeah, I have the very same concerns, being that it's an equity committee. Just to make it safer for the members, I think it would be important to just limit that, as we are not fully equipped like we would do in a regular board meeting.
I also think there would be value for virtual or in writing in case individuals are not available for virtual appearance.
For for in writing, how does that work? Like, would one of us read the public comments out loud, or is it do we just would we all read them ourselves? I guess that's when I asked, like, would somebody have to read it out loud in public?
It doesn't have to be read out loud. How in board meetings, if someone wants to write in, I will send the board the written comments. They can choose to read it, not during the board meeting, and then I will include those minutes, those comments in the meeting minutes. So they become part of the public record. And when I let people know that, sure, you can provide written public comment, I tell them that exactly, that the board will read it. It won't be read aloud at the meeting, but it will become part of the public record and part of the minutes.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Mhm.
Also note that similar to this former committee and the board committee, it was typically limited to 3 minutes. And
Right.
as a really strict kind of protocol. And so that's something to consider time-wise, how long will you allow what is, virtual to share.
Right. So does anybody else have any thoughts? Like, we've, it sounds like, we haven't voted yet, but it sounds like we've agreed no in person, but what about virtual versus written only? Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
I don't really see any downsides to virtual or the written option, so I'm not sure if there's any need to remove either one.
Okay.
I think we
I know
just
in
have,
the past-
go ahead.
in the past, I've seen if you do written that you need accommodations if someone can't write. So that would be a good thing, especially if this is equity. What are you going to do if someone can't provide the written?
That's fair.
We have allowed audio files of comments from
Okay.
people when they're not able to be there and they're not comfortable or whatever with their handwriting or not able to submit written. They can send us an audio file. We learned so much with COVID, right?
My question is, would that be live in the meeting or would they be sent to us previous to the meeting?
Well, I typically get the meeting requests. It says in the instructions by 4 o'clock, the day of the meeting. And then if they're written or an audio file or however it is, I will send it out immediately. And so you can listen to it or read it or whatever, or wait and you'll see who is coming to a meeting, or joining virtually to provide public comments. And they have to give us we ask for a zip code.
Right.
We ask what the topic is. And so, because it needs to pertain to the committee meeting, right?
Right.
I just wanted to be cautious about if we could review it ahead of time, just to avoid some hate speech or incidents that may cause a little bit of discomfort or pain for the group.
There are those people that send right 3:59, they send me an email. And so I would get it out to you as soon as I possibly could. And I am always watching my email for those on board meeting days, for example, for any public comments. And I have had things go to spam. So I'm always checking my spam on board meeting days as well to make sure, because I don't want to miss anyone.
Thank you, Patty. I just want to clarify, would they be invited to the meeting like I am right now and be able to make a public comment? That's what I want to differentiate. Which one are we allowing to? Or do they have to pre-send it, record it, video record it, whatever by 4 o'clock? Which one are we doing?
So if they appear, that would be a virtual appearance. But if it's in writing, either by audio file or email, that would be given prior to the meeting to the committee members, and then we could review both.
If we're asking them to give us public comment virtually, it would be during the meeting. We wouldn't know, we would have the topic of what they wanted to talk about, but we wouldn't know exactly what they were going to say. We do have the capability to mute someone if we needed to, if something was inappropriate or whatever. And so that can be done.
Yeah. And just a reminder, like in this one, it would say, the chair would remind that whatever rules abide by the public comment, like no hate speech or some things that they not talking about people. You would also do that right before you open it up for public comments.
Right. Ben has a script that he reads prior to every public comment.
Yeah.
And it tells what is acceptable and what's not acceptable.
Perfect. Thank you for answering my questions.
I have a clarifying question logistically. If we have our agenda start at 6:30 and then we open up for 30 minutes for public comment, how long will the meeting be? So I just want to think structurally what that means for us.
Right. Does the public comment have to be half an hour? Is that the requirement?
That's a question. And then the other one was, is that included in the agenda time? Because we only have like 90, like that's my question. Because again, talking about like our commitment and time commitment.
I don't see that we have to be as strict as a specific 30-minute time frame for public comment. So we could allow 15 minutes, 10 minutes for public comment. Looking at school board meetings, I don't see that much, especially for a committee like this. So that's just a point for conversation. What time frame sounds good for a public comment section?
Are you asking, would it go like over, so we'd have our hour and 30 minutes of our normal meeting and then public comment would be added to the end? Or are you asking, will it be integrated into that hour and 30 minutes?
Yeah, that's my clarifying question, just so that we know how much time we're committing to this.
Right.
Because if is that, because right now we're here from 6:30 to 8, would public comment be somewhere within the 6:30 and 8 range, or that's my question?
Hmm.
logistically.
I think it should be added on afterwards, so technically it'd be 6:30 to 8:30. But keeping in mind that we're not expecting a ton of long public comments. And then, because then we would have to set our schedule up by 4 o'clock that day, because then we would know how many public comments are actually coming. And if we pack it on at the end, then we don't have to move things around.
Yeah, I agree with Owen. I was gonna say we should just add it so let's 6:30 to 8:30, 8:15. And then that could be a window for any public comment. If we don't receive any, we can just adjourn the meeting early, or which could be a normal time if there's no public comment for a long period of time. So just add it on, and then if there's no one there, just adjourn it meeting.
I think that sounds good. Cool. So, but we can try and lump it all in together, right? We still need to agree on are we going to do virtual live? So I guess that's the question. I want to put it out to the floor for somebody to make a motion if you want. So we're basically going to say no in person, but it can be virtual, it can be written, or it can be an audio file. Is that what we're saying?
Could I ask, could we do 15 instead of 30? That would be
Yes.
like 5 people every meeting. That seems a little more realistic to me.
Yes, 15 minutes, yes. Okay, so there's lots of nods, so it sounds like the recommendation then is to do a 15-minute public comment at the end of the meeting, so it'd be 8 to 8:15, and that it would be virtual or written or an audio file. Okay.
Yeah. So I motion that our structure for public comment be virtual or in writing, and that public comment take place at the end of our given meeting for 15 minutes. Do we have a second?
I second.
All of those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, a motion has been seconded and approved.
Awesome. So I guess I did kind of skip over one piece of unfinished business that Zinnia brought to our attention when going over the minutes from the last meeting, and that is we essentially agreed on meeting once a month at the last meeting, right? So I guess what we would need to do is, all right, well, we don't have anything on the calendar right now, so can we do that? Can we put the calendar out for I would venture to say, and we could put it for a vote, but like December is probably out, right? So we can take the month of December off and then reconvene in January. So I guess it's a matter of deciding on days and times. Like, again, we decided on a cadence of once a month. But I guess, do we want to do literally once a month or every 4 weeks? I guess I'm not sure what's easiest in that sense from a scheduling standpoint. Zinnia or Dr. McCall, like, do either of you have experience like from school district stuff?
Well, if like today's Monday, and typically we have a board meeting at least twice a month. So just take that in consideration. If we keep it on a Monday, if you're doing once a month, then for that means for some of us, that's 3 nights. If we're doing it on a Monday, 3 nights a month. So if you're doing once a month, that makes sense.
Gotcha.
The other thing I thought, question, would it be a hybrid or all in person?
Right. I thought we agreed hybrid. So thought that's what we were gonna.
But I think we might need to clarify what hybrid means. I think, is it like in person, then virtual in person, or is it like this where we can have participants here virtual as well? So I think that
Gotcha.
might be
Okay.
some clarity.
Clarifying that. Okay.
And just to answer your question earlier related to Monday, so it looks as though we have every third and first is a board meeting, right? No. Just kidding, second and fourth.
Second and fourth,
Mostly.
right, mostly.
I think this is for the, just for the ability to schedule and be able to get that out.
Right.
So if it's every, ooh, remind me again.
Second and fourth. That's the
Second
board.
and fourth. Board meetings,
Board
and we are looking at first and
First or
third.
third. Okay. But I mean, it doesn't have to be on Mondays too. I mean, I think our last meeting was on a Wednesday or, yeah. So, I mean, we could do a different day of the week, but planning that far ahead. Hopefully people's schedules would be open, but you know, putting it out there, like, so I guess again, putting it on the floor, does anybody have any full opinion regarding day of the week? Like, does it Monday or Wednesdays work?
So, sorry, I missed this part. Are we meeting twice a month or once a month?
Once a month, once a month.
Perfect, thank you.
I guess I would say Mondays would work best for me. I'm not sure about others, but Mondays would be better.
Mondays, okay.
I agree. Mondays seem to work very well.
All right. Okay, cool. Okay, so Mondays once a month. And then I guess we'll try and align with the board. We'll probably try and stick with the really once a month, not like the every 4 weeks type thing, because then we would eventually overlap. So let's see, what's the first? Yeah, what's the first Monday in January? I guess, do we want to do the first Monday or second or third Monday?
So that's a non,
Right.
it's a holiday.
That's the second,
the
right?
Second, and
Yeah.
also the 16th is also
That's also,
a holiday.
right, so that's Martin Luther King Day, so that won't work.
And there's a regular board meeting on the 23rd, but on the 30th, there's nothing. Yeah. So
It's a
might wanna
special,
do
that's a special fifth Monday.
for January, maybe just for January only, if you want to do that 5th Monday.
So if we have the 30th, that would be one that we could hold.
Mhm.
Okay,
And then it looks like we have, the 6th is a board meeting week. And so the next week isn't, so that's the
13th.
13th. So the 13th is open on February. Do we want to do that?
so go 2 weeks then between
Or-
meetings.
I didn't know.
Also the 27th, isn't it?
The 27th.
February the 27th.
Oh, yes.
The 27th is open.
Do you want to do February 27th?
Yeah, let's do February 27th then. Oh, because that's the fourth Monday, right?
It's not on the calendar.
Yeah,
Oh, it's just not, okay. So
so it'd be the
the
20th.
20th. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
So that's the thing about Mondays.
exactly. That's the challenge of Mondays.
Yeah.
So,
And then March will be spring break. There's gonna be a time there.
Right.
okay. Patty, on the 27th is not, the board meeting isn't on there, but it's just, maybe it's just not on the calendar yet. I didn't see it on the calendar.
Would it be good maybe for us to take a look at the calendars and bring over some of those dates? At least we have the
Yes,
30th.
yeah,
ready.
so I think that sounds like a good idea. So if it's okay with everybody, I would make a motion for our next meeting to be on January 30th, with the goal of working a bit offline to come up with the schedules for the rest of the year that we can propose at the 30th meeting.
Okay.
So I put that in motion.
Okay, any seconds for our next meeting being January 30th, which is a Monday?
I second the motion.
Second motion. All those in favor of meeting on January 30th, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion has been made and seconded. Our next meeting date will be January 30th. And would we like to tack on that 15 minutes on that date for public comment? Yeah. I make a motion that we tack on, that'll be the first of our public comment date. I don't know if we need a motion for that. If we can just initiate that. We've already agreed that we would have that time designated for public comment. Okay. Anything else for unfinished business? Okay, we're going to move on to our next agenda item, which is EEAC East intersection. We spoke about this briefly in our last meeting, where the East Committee had similar goals as the EEAC. We're going to look at how those could be integrated and combined. And Vice Chair Jacob and I met with Director Unn and Dr. McCall to discuss this as well. And there were some really good discussion about how we can enable some of those areas in which our objectives were aligned and how we can bring that into this meeting. I can't recall, was every committee member present, a member of the East Committee outside of our newest committee member? Yeah. Okay. Say that again.
So everybody here outside of Nina was part of the East Committee.
Okay, given that there was some question about confusion between the two, how we integrate the two committees, now that this one is really taking the place of the East Committee with, like I said, some of the same objectives. I wanted to put that on the floor for discussion. If anyone had any comments or thoughts about how we would further integrate the two.
And the one thing that I would say too is, because I know I operate this way, and maybe other people do. I mean, we definitely want to have a discussion about it. But if people haven't maybe had a chance to, really review in depth and do a comparison between the Bias Incidents and Hate Speech Oversight Committee, AR, as well as the OAR for this, I mean, I think it would be a good idea to probably continue this discussion in the January 30th meeting. But again, if anybody has anything right now, I'd still like to hear about it.
So maybe just to give a quick reminder of the OAR for this committee, it's related to looking at specific issues related to equity outside of just like climate and culture and bias incidences, whereas the bias incident and hate speech policy was directly connected to impacts of bias incidents and hate speech. We know that within equity, there is, it actually is a big umbrella around seeing how our system functions and works. So that is a bigger, broader reach, and that's the OAR for this committee. The East Committee, the oversight is specifically connected to the implementation and accountability for bias, incidents, and hate speech. So I know that for some of you that have been participating, I'd want to hear like what are the things that you're still expecting and wanting to have happen under Ish. And then I think that's a great idea to have time to review it and continue the conversation. But I think it might be pretty relevant and important to bring forward what are the things you still want to see happen within this committee's work related to the Ish process.
And part of how this came up, there was a community member who asked who the members of the bias incidents and hate speech were. So we knew that, I don't want to say that had an end of life, but we knew that we were trying to integrate those. So those committee members would be this body right here, in case someone wanted to reach out and ask questions about the bias incidents and hate speech. And then we would just need to identify how we structure our response when there is an impact of hate speech that occurs. How do we move forward with that as a committee as well? So keep that in mind when you're thinking about it for our next meeting discussion.
Yeah, okay, so I haven't had really much time to like really differentiate both committees, but something that I just personally feel is that a lot of the things I do for the district is really about like the hate speech and bias work. And for me, I feel like although this has a very different structure compared to each, in my opinion, I just kind of want to like bring the values from like each to this new committee. And that way, although we are tackling a lot more broader things, I still kind of want to have those roots of like Ish. And that's just me personally.
I'm really glad you brought that out, Henry, because I was thinking the same thing, because the Ish committee, the Ish plan essentially came from students. It's student voice and student recommendation versus the OIR, which came from the state, and that's cool and all. But I completely agree with you. So when reviewing it, I mean, we want to bring over, that feel from Ish into the work that we're doing right now. I would like to carry over as much as we can of it to try and keep that there, since that's what students asked for.
And I would also challenge you all to think about the structure of how that might be structured, whether it would be a substructure of this committee, maybe 2 people to really take that on and address that and report back to the larger committee members, and what that might look like from a dimensional level. So, thank you. Any other comment, points of clarification regarding the EEAC Ish interception before we table that until the next meeting?
Can I ask a clarifying question of what you would want committee members to prepare for the conversation on the 30th, just so that, we're able to know what the talk conversation will be like and what we need to be prepared for?
So what I would like to see, and if we can circulate this and email the OER for the bias incidents and hate speech, so everyone is well informed about that, circulated among the committee.
Yeah, because there are 7 specific items at the end of the AR that calls on the committee to do. So of those specific ones, which ones do we want to carry over? Can we merge some of them? That type of stuff is what I would be looking at.
So would it be, would that information go out when the agenda for the next meeting go out as a pre-read in preparation for the
Yes,
meeting in
please, yeah.
January?
Exactly, yeah. Would like for the committee members to do that reading ahead of time and come with those recommendations.
And as your district liaison, I'm happy to send that out actually tonight for folks, and then you will have it ahead of time.
Thank you, Senior.
If we
Okay,
could also attach it, sorry, if we could also attach it to the agenda.
For the invite?
Yes, sorry. If we could also attach it to the agenda for the invite for January 30th, that would be great, so we can all find it.
Great.
Sure, sure. And also, so we have the idea that everyone would read it in advance of the next meeting. And thank you, Dr. M, for circulating that.
Sorry. Would you want me to offer a graphic organizer potentially to bring, so for people to work off of so that we can come back? So for instance, if the task is to review what to keep, what not to keep, what questions, we can, I can also attach like a scaffold for that if needed.
That would be ideal.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay, and moving right along. First of all, I want to make sure that all thoughts have been shared with regard to item 4 of the meeting objectives, the EEAC and EASH interception. Okay, we'll move on to the next meeting objective. I've asked Director Un to facilitate the discussions and topics related to the executive equity audit. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think maybe this will start with directing you to the executive summary, and then maybe I'll walk through how to read the equity audit. And then we'll do a light touch, but I think this might be an ongoing conversation just because it's a lot of information. So this is, if you have it in front of you, the way that the document is organized is at the top, it talks about our mission and vision connected to equity, and also aligned to our policy ACC, which is educational equity and racial justice. In the AC accountability report, in that policy, there is a statement related to accountability of that mission vision. And of that, you'll see these specific components of accountability. So you see a list 1 through 6. These are the 6 areas that the board have highlighted as areas of focus when thinking about equity in our district. Number 1, academic outcomes. Number 2, enrollment in advanced courses/programs. Number 3, program participation, talent and gifted, English language development, special education identification. So number 4 is well-rounded educational participation, such as athletics and arts. And number 5 is engagement, attendance, discipline, and referral data. Number 6 is racially and linguistically diverse workforce. So in the following, I'm just going to walk us through it if that's okay. And then I think we can do some analysis a little bit later. But number 1, you'll see some specific measures related to academic outcomes. So Oregon Statewide Assessment Systems, or OSAS. This is the statewide assessment that students take 3rd grade on through middle school, and I think at 11th grade. Yes, Dr. McCall, is that right? Okay. And then you'll see some of the data points here. When we talk about an equity audit, one of the things that you want to see is the question, who are we serving? So you'll see demographically who we're serving, but then when you take a look at that data, you'll see also who are we serving well and who are we not serving well. And so that is highlighted by the discrepancy between who we see we're serving well and who we're not serving well. So for instance, if we take a look, and this is just an example, for instance, when we take a look at some of the data here around ELA, English Language Arts, you'll notice that we're not serving well our current English learners and or students accessing migrant education, our students in special education. So these are the special populations. So when we say underserved communities, we talk about many of these students, as well as some of the students that have historically we've not served well. So again, going back to in this document, we're seeing that we are not serving our American Indian Alaska Native community well. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's how you would read that data quantitatively. And the other thing I want to direct your attention to is the sections where it says recommendations. So this is I think it's on page 3, where you'll see for each of the different categories, you'll see a summary of the outcome and some recommendations connected to it. So I think I would like, if you can direct your attention to those, that would be helpful to get a brief summary of the data and some recommendations connected to our programming and systems. So in that section, you'll see a 4-year graduation summary, and then recommendations, 9th grade on track, and so forth. So I'm not going to go through all of those because I think there's a lot of data there for academic outcomes, but those are the measures around academic outcomes that we want to take a look at. So I want to just briefly highlight that you have on track, 9th grade on track data. You have dual credit IB course enrollment data. You have CTE enrollment summary data. And you have I think, special programs. And I think these are connected to the components highlighted earlier around accountability. So the academic outcomes were related to some of the assessment, the enrollment in advanced courses. That's an example of that. And then you see the program participation that's connected to talented and gifted English language development and special education. So you'll see the summary and some recommendations connected there. So when we take a look at the participation, you're looking at who's participating and who isn't. That's part of the equity. You're looking for equity gaps. And then connected to well-rounded education and participation, you see extracurricular activity, engagement summary. So you'll see who's participating. So this is you'll see who's participating in after-school sports, arts, fine arts. And the reason why that's important is because as students advance within their educational career, if they are not at grade level, then a lot of their schedule gets filled by intervention work. And so then that doesn't leave opportunities for engagement in arts and sports or extracurricular activities. So that's a point of review when we talk about our equity lens. And then the next few portions around engagement, attendance, discipline, and referral, we use a lot of the data connected to that as understanding the culture and the health of our systems and whether it's inclusive and fosters a sense of belonging. So you'll see a little bit about who within our system, and ODR stands for Office Discipline Referrals. So who within our system have received a potentially disproportionate amount of discipline referrals. So for instance, if we have some of our demographics making up 3% of our a whole community, but yet they make 25% of the office discipline referral, then that means that we're disproportionately impacting them. Does that make sense? Okay. So those are some of the feedback that we have, and this is all what we call quantitative data. So it's a lot about the numbers. Some of the things that we talk about, and I've heard from chair and vice chair, is the desire to hear and get insight perception data of the experiences of our students. So, qualitative data might be like surveys that help understand a little bit, although it can be reported as numbers, but you can have an insight to the perceptions of students within the community. And for staff, we have I think upbeat survey, so you can see staff insights of how they feel a sense of belonging or not, or included in the process. So those are some of the data that we also have available that I can bring forward. Yeah.
As part of your group that captures a lot of this data or sources, are there specific surveys planned, or are you in the midst of planning so that we can give insight on that? Or do you have students giving insight? And as a body, would we be able to give insight in the structure of those surveys?
So a couple
review.
of things.
Yeah.
There are a couple of things. So we have systematic data. So in our elementary and middle school, we have positive behavior intervention systems where there is a common survey that gets dispersed to students to answer, that allows us to get an insight across levels. But there are also other surveys that I think schools survey students all the time around, like, what they want to see, what they want to do, and stuff like that. But I think I believe that as part of the task of this committee is that you can review some of the data and maybe share what you think is missing, and then pose that as a question related to, is there a way in which we can get that answer or understanding. The reason why we use the PBS data is that we can use it over time, and we can see the health of our system and how that functions. And then finally, it's the last section is around racially and linguistically diverse workforce, and that is a report that's connected to how representative is our staff to our students, linguistically as well as racially. So that's the summary of the report. I think it would be important for the committee to take a look at the data and really highlight what's sticking out for you, and in the discrepancy between, who are the students that we're serving well as a district, and who are the students that we're not serving well. One of the things that we made clear at the integrated planning committee is that this data does not, we should not read this data as it's the students, like it dictates what the students are able or not able to do. It really needs to highlight, what have we not learned about our students well enough to be able to support them so that they're successful. Because as highlighted here at the beginning of the executive summary, at TTSD, we believe that every student can learn given the right conditions. And so that's the way that we look at our data.
I also wanted to add, in addition to this, you mentioned perception data and what do our students tell us their experience. And so we have some of that data that we could also bring to the committee to share.
Yeah, and I couldn't help but look ahead and the audit already, and there is some overlap there where there's a lot of recommendations surrounding getting more perception data on some of these. And so I think it would be very important for this committee to get a hold of that data once the school district gets it.
So the perception data, we have some of those systematic ways of getting that data, but what we could do, aligned to what this committee can ask for, is what we call voice data, which is we can do open-ended surveys, which we actually get more insight to, because some of those perception data is like a Likert scale. So it's still quantifiable-ish, right? But what we can do is, per review of the data here, and maybe when we take a look at some of the perception data, what questions do you all have for students, for families, for staff that you might want to know? And then our department, the function of our department is building a group of people's skill set to get the experiential data, right, from students, families, and staff around how they're experiencing our school. So for instance, if you're curious about the outcome of our discipline referral data and who is disproportionately being referred or potential face exclusion, I think that might be a good question to bring forward if you want to know the health of our system. Because again, going back to, if we say that every student can learn, and let's say the data says we're excluding a certain amount of students a certain amount of days, that takes away from their learning. So I think those might be the questions around if that is a practice in disciplinary practices, and we want to ask more around, well, what's that impact like for students that have faced those consequences? Are they able, like, taking a look at, have they been able to, what's the association with their efficacy as a learner? You know, and I think those are the questions that this committee can bring up, and we can then bring that to teams that can go and ask those questions to some of the students that you're curious about. So I shared a little bit. I wonder if there's any questions, any insights that you might have for me, some connections that you're making. I see a few folks that are already making markings on the summary. Maybe there's something that's popping up for you.
I have a basic question. I just wanted to know what the definition of regular attender is when they're talking about attendance.
We don't have that, I mean, it's either 92 or 95%.
Okay, 92 or 95% attendance rate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which then makes it, that's not right. So that there's if you're missing, I think 5 to 8 days, that's well below the regular attendance rate. Maybe it's 172.
That's for the whole entire school year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please don't hold that. I'm going to check the math and I'll bring that back.
We'll do fact checking.
Yeah, we can then put it in the meeting notes.
And I don't know, Chair and Vice Chair, is that's something we want to look at now, but also in addition to, similar to maybe the homework for the EASH committee, is there like an ask to review the audit as well, to come back with some insights or recommendations?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely crucial. In order to truly disseminate this equity audit, we'll need to take a determinative view on looking through it carefully, as Director Unn said, identifying questions that we have about the data, insights that we might want to delve into a bit more, For instance, I saw the percent of students in each demographic identified for tag, but I didn't see, and I could have glossed over it, but I didn't see a corresponding report of the students that are currently, that have been in tag versus, or is there a difference between students identified and the actual student community that participated?
Yeah, I think
So-
that those would be really good questions.
Yeah.
That
So-
we can pose back. Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's absolutely crucial that we each delve deep into it, especially the students, so they can, who are closer to these programs and share any insights or questions they have.
Would you want me to, I think, for those of you that will be joining our integrated planning committee meetings, I think they're doing an exercise where we're going to take a look at the equity audit and do an Atlas protocol. But I'm happy to, along with the other items before, give you the modified protocol to review the executive summary. So the structure of it is, what does the data say? All those other pieces, we can use that as a way to bring that insight back.
Yeah, if you can share that structure, that would be wonderful. So we're all aligned in the way that we're looking at this.
I have a question. I'm assuming you'll run this audit again. What is the time span between these types of audits? And in the next one, would you list actions that were taken and what the progress is towards that?
Yes, so at the, so as per the policy, a lot of the things that are highlighted at the back page, thank you for highlighting that, is a summary of accountability review and report. So under the very specific areas around academics, you'll see there's a report on the health of multi-tiered systems of support, the health of tier 1 systems. The team responsible is our cabinet members, and they will actually give a report to the board before the year ends. So it's an annual process. So what will happen is, per all of these summaries, so Dr. McCall leads an instructional subset of cabinet. And so a lot of this will be tracked and monitored throughout the year with data to support some of these things. So special programs participation, you can expect a report and updates on interventions, initiatives, and investments, and understanding root cause of disproportionate identification and representation in special education and tag services. So that would get some of the data and insight that Chair Dorsey had brought forward. So we'll use some of that data. So the way in which the data is structured per these very specific measures, every year you'll see another one. And you notice how it has data over the years. So the next year, 2022, 2023, you'll see that added to the longitudinal data here. But you can expect to see updates for these specific areas of accountability and reports to the board annually. Yeah, so that actually can be included.
Yeah.
I know that you had highlighted that, we're supposed to help do some of the reporting, but some of that data can be used as part of it.
Okay, I'm just looking at a time check. It's 7:52. I have promised to get us out by 8 o'clock. So are there any other, we can discuss this section of the agenda for hours, I know. But just being aware of time, are there any other comments, points of clarification on what we've discussed about the executive summary?
Yeah, no, I think like Director Unn said, is that we review this and come prepared to, talk about it more at the next meeting. But again, there's a lot of data here, so we're going to look at it again too. So
Yeah.
review it and keep it close.
And will that help us with number 6 to think about the committee's work for this school year.
I'm glad you went there, Dr. McCall, because that was my next point. This really bumps up into our next objective, which is what will be the committee's work focus for 2022-23. We're almost at the end of 2022. Our next meeting will be in 2023. So we'll really want to ramp up as quickly as possible, using a structured approach on what we want to identify as what will be our charge in consideration of the OER that we've discussed, and also how the executive summary can identify those areas that we truly want to embrace and include in our end of year report, as that will be due in June. So when we look at the executive summary and look at the pillars of structure that Director Un is going to provide, really think about it as an opening into our work for the year and the impacts that we can make. And I'll also look at bringing other groups to talk about their role as it pertains to equity to this committee, so that they can speak as to how they bring about some of the changes that improve the equitable focus of the district. And I just welcome any and all input and insights that the committee members might have as to how we can drive that charge. So as we're talking about our work focus for this year, between this meeting and our last meeting, we talked a little bit about it. Does anybody have any comments, any insights that they obtained during the break between our last meeting and this one that they want to talk about, bring to the table for discussion? You all don't have to speak at one time.
I guess the one thing that I would say that I just thought of when considering the bridging the gap between the EEAC and the EASH committee. Again, the EEAC, we have a report due at the end of the year. Well, the EASH committee also had a report due at the end of the year. So what do we want to do with that? Do we want to do two different reports? Do we want to combine the two? How do we want to combine the two? So that's the another thing to consider for the next meeting. So as you're looking, comparing the two processes, think about that.
Going back to what Henry had highlighted earlier, one of the questions that came up was, really anchoring and rooting in some of the EASH process So just a reminder, when we went through the EASH process, we took a look at artifacts, we took a look at the data, we took a look at the things connected to EASH. One of the things that we have practiced for the board and cabinet has been to hear from the direct people responsible for EASH at each of the schools. So that might be, if this is continuing to be a part of that oversight process, we could invite administrators to share about their EASH plans and walk through, here's what that looks like, and maybe even have it be like a panel, right, where we could ask some of the questions around, well, how are you implementing? How do you know what you're doing is effective? How many people within your school does know, like those type of things, so that it is a little bit more interactive, and we're moving away from the paper component is still there, but to be able to actually sit down and work that through with the administrators, the deans, some of the staff that are involved, I think that might be an example of what we can do, right? And especially when you have some of those questions that you have related to that data and the outcome, you could have some of the administrators, some of cabinet, some of, the folks that are responsible for reporting back out, like, to be able to respond to those things. So those are some examples.
Excellent, excellent points. We're going to have a lot of guest speakers coming into this committee. I can see that's only going to enrich our conversations and our plans for the year. Any other comments, points of discussion?
I was just referencing again the OAR, and the charge of this committee is to include the impact on our underserved families and communities. And also the board, our school board, can bring to this committee some topics for discussion. I just want to keep that in mind as we think about the committee's work, and as we review the equity audit as well as the recommendations from the each committee, to see how they also intersect with the purpose under the OAR. So if we can review that again too, that would be helpful.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. For instance, as part of the duties of the EEAC, it talks about in section 4A, advising the school board and school district superintendent when a situation arises that positively impacts, and how we can further that impact on a larger scale, and knowing what resources we have at our disposal to learn about those positive impacts. And whether or not we might want someone on the board who has access to that or who can speak to that when we meet, they can bring those up. I don't know if we currently do, but that's certainly a question that we can bring to the table in our next meeting. It is now 8 o'clock. I'm going to do a quick request. Are there any other business that we haven't discussed and we need to in the next minute? Okay. All right. The time is now 8 o'clock. The meeting is now adjourned.